Hey, this is Sydney, and I am here to talk us through it for the time of July 30th to August 5th, 2025. Some little housekeeping notes. I'm open for readings. And in the beginning of this video, we're going to go over some of the broader strokes of what it's kind of looking like in the sky. This video is going to have timestamps, so if you want to skip ahead to an important day in your week to just kind of see what the vibe is, I highly recommend you do that. Otherwise, just like watch it through. I would love it if you kind of gave it a thumbs up or a comment to ask a question in the comments. I love hearing from all of you. And I also wanted to know, does the chart over to the left here help you? If not, I might just like kibosh it all together. I do post these videos on Instagram and TikTok on a day-by-day basis, so I can reach other audiences. And the whole reason why I even make these things is, one, I'm obsessed with astrology. I'm currently a student at Kepler College going for my full diploma. It's going to take a little while. But also because I want to be able to meet my next clients. Right now, my clientele is very word of mouth. I have a lot of returning clients. They come back for their birthdays or, special things that they're trying to plan. But I'm really, really interested in the movement in the sky and how it impacts us collectively and also individually. So that's a good note to remember as well, is that these aspects, while they're playing out kind of collectively, energetically, they may not be impacting you individually unless you have planets that configuration is particularly touching. So it's good to know your chart or to have an astrologer that knows your chart so I can kind of tell you what's going on. Perfect. Okay. So, kind of broad stroke delineations of kind of what's going on in the sky. We know that everything is absolutely batshit, right? Like politically, environmentally, we're going through a lot. And I think a lot of seeds are being kind of planted now that are going to push us forward in the future. We have the big outer planets are all within, a degree to 3 degrees of their perfect interactions. And so we know that things are forming to kind of push us forward on a collective, societal, governmental, foundational, spiritual, artistic, cultural sort of level. So that's something that we need to know. Right now, I think that a lot of us are feeling kind of like we're in this incubator and we're all kind of looking around like, what's next? What's going on? There is a really beautiful set of videos by an astrologer named Rosie Finn. You can look her up on YouTube in particular and find some various videos and interviews that she's done about Pluto going out of bounds. Pluto is our most outermost planet. He is, has to do with like deep fundamental structural changes that have to do on like not just a psychological, but like it's just such a powerful cultural planet that has to do with like our wounds. It has to do with obsession. It has to do with power. It has to do with control. It has to do with, our future revolution. And I could not recommend watching those videos if you have an interest in what is potentially on the pike for us. Okay. I just wanted to say that because I've just been so impacted and touched and in a way feeling hopeful for the future, even though right now we're definitely in the shit. So with that being said, we still have Mercury retrograde in Leo. As I'm recording this on July 30th, which is, or July 29th, actually, pardon, Tuesday, Mercury is sitting retrograde, very close to the sun. He's combust. He's not doing that great. He does have some dignity. He's close to his ruler. It's complicated, but I know that for me, I've been experiencing a lot of like weird little technological glitches, breakdowns, weird stuff. Definitely watching stuff happen with my friends in like their cars. Uh, it was really interesting to hear of a person I know buying a vehicle during this time. And I was like, oh, I bet it's bright red and kind of obnoxious, but also potentially giving him some issues. And yeah, it's a big, big truck. And it's, he wants to do a whole bunch of stuff to it to make it fancier and shinier, but it's been kind of giving him some issues and getting all of those various parts. And I think that that is in part to Mercury retrograde. Mercury will be retrograde until August 11th. He's going to clear the shadow over the degrees in which he retrograded over on the 25th. So after the 11th, he's moving in direct in motion. By the 25th, he's cleared the ground he already covered. And then hopefully, in some ways, all systems go somewhat around communication, around, the ways that we share our ideas, new ideas, right? That's kind of what we want to go forward. So if things aren't quite working how you want them to work right now, that's okay. I think that Mercury retrograde is a really good time for reflection, going back over things, projects, communications, letters you want to write, reviewing contracts, those sorts of things without taking any action on them if you can until Mercury goes direct. Within a degree, we have Saturn sextile Uranus, Saturn conjunct Neptune, Saturn sextile Pluto, Neptune sextile Pluto. It's all of these big outer planets, like I mentioned just before, are really on the precipice of like really pushing us forward into this very strange, new, fresh, technological future, with Uranus in Gemini and Neptune in Aries. I think this is just really about the new frontier of AI. Still can't read a chart though, so do not use ChatGPT or any of that stuff to delineate your transits, your charts, or anything, because it's still just not there yet for that. And I hope it never does, because I think that there is an instinctual art that comes from the astrologer interpreting the signs and the planets through the education that they have gotten. So within 3 degree, we have that Uranus trine Pluto. I mean, powerful, powerful revolutionary changes. Very interested in how that is going to play out. I mean, we're starting to watch things kind of form. That's going to be exact in July 17th, 2026. So we are a year out from this exact thing. We're watching these things kind of build right now. This week we do have Venus's ingress into Cancer. So she's going to go into a sign where she's a bit happier. Not that she's not chatty and happy in Gemini, but now because Venus has an affinity to the moon. It's moist. It is, about nurturing. There's a suppleness there that exists. That's going to happen on the 30th. That's going to be covered in this podcast around 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Venus is going to immediately meet some confrontation with naughty Saturn. He's not happy. He's retrograde. He is fallen. He's not happy where he is right now. He's feeling a bit disrespected. He probably wants to kind of lay down the smackdown via a square, a dominating square to Venus. We'll talk about that in a minute. And Neptune is also going to square Venus. Chiron is going to retrograde, the planet that a lot of people call the wounded healer. I like to think of him as a bit of like an alchemist, a wisdom, a teacher. Is going to go retrograde on the 30th. Also, it's kind of interesting to think that we have a ingress into a very nurturing sign for Venus, and then Chiron is going to kind of decide to go back over some old wounds. I think it's an interesting thought experiment. This is the last week with Mars and Virgo in the get shit done, task list, taskmaster, detail oriented, bit persnickety, maybe a bit critical Mars. So as it's leaving the sign of Virgo, he's going to go into the sign of his detriment. And I also think that we may start to feel a bit blocked or pressure starting on August 3rd. Okay, I think that those are the big notes. So let's get into the day by day. Wednesday, July 30th is Mercury's day. We have Mercury retrograde, like we said earlier, and the moon is void of course all day. So this is not a day to initiate new things because it's probably not going to turn out how you wanted it to if it turns out at all, right? So this is not a day to sign important contracts that, could potentially like bring you money. And I mean, Mercury is also retrograde too. So, start a business, start a new venture. Let's not do it today. Okay. Just first and foremost, don't do it today. The moon isn't doing anything major, and so we shouldn't either. At 7:41 a.m., Chiron is going to station retrograde. So now we're going to go back over old wisdom, wounds, things like that, trying to teach us maybe new ways of looking at things, especially when it has to do with our own instinctual hurts, the ways that we've hurt ourselves, the way that we've maybe punished ourselves, maybe stuff around ego and pride. Yeah, I think that, Chiron is a centaur. He's not a planet, but he can be very, very important and pivotal in people's charts. Chiron is going to be stationing retrograde at that 27th degree of Aries. And so if you have planets at 27 degrees, Chiron's kind of like saying, like, hey, let's go over some old territory here, some wounds, some issues. Let's see if we really learn from them, or we can grow from them, or move forward from them. 2:12 p.m. we do get this lovely moon quintile sun aspect. So this is kind of like a nice flowing energy to kind of go on with our afternoon. Around 4 p.m. the moon is going to enter the Via Combusta. That is the 15 degrees of Libra to the 15 degrees of Scorpio. It's when she gets a little bit spicier, a little bit more passionate. This is definitely, considering that the moon is void of course today, I think this is a great time for the moon to be Via Combusta because we're not initiating new things that could potentially cause any issues. Some really lovely ideas could be flowing in how we're like communicating and connecting to people about some old ideas or ideas that we're revisiting. And I say that because we have the moon in Libra is going to quintile that retrograde Mercury in Leo. So again, not new, some old, some revisit. And then the biggest aspect of the day is at 8:57 p.m. Venus is going to enter Cancer. Venus is going to enter the sign that the moon is very comfortable in. Cancer is a sign of safety, security. It is of nurturing. It's about feeling. It's like the gut feeling. Cancer rules over the breasts as a body part. And as Venus traverses her time in this nurturing emotional sign, where she says, I care for you via how I can emotionally connect with you or connect with myself, right? I nurture you through feeding you soup and, giving you nice hugs and making you feel safe, right? A person that has Venus in Cancer in their chart really wants to connect with people emotionally in love and relationship. So a lovely thing about this ingress for Venus is that the moon is in Libra. So there's a mutual reception and this like connecting kind of energy. It's kind of juicy. Even though the signs are square, I think there's something about like, and now I'm going to initiate this action and like taking care and being in care, right? And doing the things that make me feel safe and secure inside of relationship as well. Of note though, because Venus has entered Cancer, Venus is now well within the degree or the 3 degrees that it would need to be interacting with Saturn and Neptune. And so before Venus gets to kind of do this like full beautiful Venus thing that it wants to do, harmonizing, connecting, beautifying, all of that, she's got some business to take care of, right? And then after that, she is in the same sign as Jupiter, beautiful, right? These are co-present in Cancer. And so we would want to know personally, where is Cancer in your chart? I'm a Virgo rising, and so by whole sign, Cancer is my 11th house, and that's where both benefics are going to be, right? Kind of, expanding my sense of like friendship and connection, maybe some stuff with hopes and dreams. And then, also bringing a harmonizing aspect. This kind of means that this sector is kind of maybe a bit all systems go after it clears that square from Saturn and Neptune. The good thing is like Venus is moving relatively on the faster side. She's one of the faster planets. And so in a few days' time, then we're going to get some breath there. Thursday, July 31st is Jupiter's day. Jupiter is in Cancer, the sign of his exaltation. He's feeling good. He's feeling juicy. He wants to expand through feeling, right? Through sensing, those like kind of physical senses, or these intuitive senses, not so much physical, but like that intuitive knowing, right? That intuitive wisdom. That is offered to us. Today is kind of interesting. I don't necessarily think that it is the easiest day, all things considered. We do have a very spicy aspect of the moon opposing that retrograde Chiron. This can feel just like an emotional ouch, a intuitive hurt, a way of being aware of the ways that we're not potentially healed yet. I think the awareness aspect is nice because then we know what we're working with, right? But it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, right? And that happens at 4:41 a.m. At 10:25 a.m., moon is going to enter Scorpio. And that void, of course, from the previous day is going to end. Now, the moon in Scorpio is in the sign of its fall. It's very kind of internally turned in, very, very protective. This can feel kind of cranky, very, very intuitive, wanting to get to the bottoms of things. The moon in Scorpio can be a really tough moon to deal with, just in general. Yeah. However, good news, bad news bears, right? We get the moon is going to trine Venus at 11:52 a.m. And so I think that this can feel like a balm. We're feeling after that opposition where we're like really aware of the ways that we're hurt, and maybe we're feeling this really intensely, that moon in Scorpio. And now Venus, with that meeting with Venus, it's like, okay, but these are the ways that I can take care of myself. This is the way that I can like nurture here to like kind of work on this thing that I'm feeling. In the afternoon, I think that this is when things kind of get a little bit more difficult, anxious, and antagonistic, feeling like nothing's really going to resolve. And that is because we're going to have the moon quincunx Uranus, retrograde Saturn, and retrograde Pluto, and also Neptune. Yep. And so all of these quincunxes are going to bring that anxious sort of feeling. There's going to be something about, it's not just anxious though, it's like this like internally psychologically churning around the sorts of ways that we're trying to set up ourselves for the future, or the sorts of foundations that we're dealing with, the type of work that we're doing. And there certainly could be, especially at 3:19 p.m. we get the moon square that retrograde Pluto, like this intensity of feeling internalized because of all of these ways that we've had to kind of ingest and like figure out a new way forward. We're not, I just feel like it feels a little bit critical at this moment. We need to remember in times like these when they feel like a psychological or a instinctive like little pressure cooker, that the moon does move fast. But I think emotionally today is spicy. Let's just say spicy and not really quite finished. At 4:41 p.m., we do get the sun conjunct Mercury, which is Cazimi. So they're within no degrees. This is going to be perfect. It's going to happen at 4 degrees, 24 minutes. And it's within 2 degrees of opposing Pluto. And so I think this is when like secrets that have been maybe obscured or hidden, like really come out. I think that there's something where we're like, oh, wow. And also there could just be like ideas around or words exchanged that have to do with power and control dynamics. But I do think that this has to do with like secrets being kind of revealed to us in like, oh, wow, okay, sort of ways. So watch the news on this afternoon. Friday, August 1st is Venus's day. Venus has just entered Cancer, and today she's got a lot of business to attend to with Saturn and Neptune. Very early in the morning, we get that moon that is in Scorpio by quintile Saturn and Neptune. I think there's going to be wanting to kind of like float away, wanting to be a little bit more quiet and internal. There's like a solemnness that's kind of, I don't know, inferred here. It's interesting that they're both the moon and Saturn and Neptune, retrograde Saturn and Neptune, pardon me, are going to be answering to that Mars in Virgo, that's really trying to kind of finish up its time in Virgo. Mars is trying to maybe clean up, atone, make little changes as it finishes up its time in that sign. 5:41 a.m. Actually, before that, 4 a.m., we get the moon square retrograde Mercury. It's like waking up with an argument. It's like waking up with an argument where like you feel hurt and like pride is involved. It doesn't feel lovely. I think that this is it's a spicy little aspect. It's an opening square. And then we also, right after that, have the moon squaring the sun. It's a first quarter crisis of awareness square. So these first quarter squares, I think we're feeling pretty cranky, right? These things are all happening in fixed signs. We want to kind of stay rooted where we are. Fixity wants to kind of like do its own thing. It is not about changing. It's not about taking action, but the square forces us into action. And so there could be like, we know that something's wrong and we have to do something about it. And we feel pretty cranky about it too. We will have at 6:30, around 6:30 a.m., Venus in Cancer is going to square that retrograde Saturn in Aries. It's going to be in a dominating square, kind of forcing itself onto Venus. And, I think that this could mean that we are collectively faced with some sort of situation, test, limit, boundary, oppression that has to do with government, it has to do with systems, that we have to take care of first that we have to kind of feel our way through, nurture our way through, take some sort of action to kind of deal with this like Saturn that feels disrespected, in order for us to get free of that and move forward. We will have some help with the moon trine Jupiter at 10:30 a.m. or around 10:30 a.m. And this can almost feel like generosity, right? This can feel hopefully like a balm, something soothing. So it's like, even though we feel this pressure and this like intensity around having to take care of something that has to do with Venusian things, it could have to do with uh, anything having to do with women. Venus in Cancer could be around the nurturing of like children or the mothering instinct, the mothering principle. Venus can deal with money, certainly. Saturn can deal with governments, and it could, and we know what's going on in the world right now. There's a lot of stuff that has to do with money, tariffs, taxes, things like that. And so it'd be really interesting to kind of see what kind of arises that we are going to have to kind of traverse in that way. But I think that with that trine from the moon to Jupiter, we have some help to maybe give us some emotional resolve to move through it. At 1:48 a.m., we are going to have Venus square retrograde Neptune. I think that this could feel like being confused or just disillusioned with the situation that has been presented to us. So it's like we hit this wall, we hit this limit, we are like this, pardon my French, shit sandwich that has been handed to us. And then we're just like, fuck, okay, I'm going to get through it, moon trine Jupiter. And then this wall of fiery water kind of comes and dampens the party. What good is it for? Right? This could just be feeling disillusioned about relationships, value, money, the value of our money. Anyways, and then going forward, we're kind of like grappling with that until we get into the evening. And then we have the moon is going to sesqui square retrograde Saturn and retrograde Neptune. This is a very like cranky, strange sort of energy. It's like, trying to push forward, but you keep hitting your head against the wall and you're feeling really uncomfortable about it all. We're going to get a sesqui square from the moon to Venus as well. So relationships could take on this really kind of not feeling good kind of energy, for like we feel uncomfortable in these spaces. And then at 10:45 p.m., I think this is, what it leads all up to is Venus in Cancer, quincunx retrograde, Pluto in Aquarius. So the quincunx aspect is disharmony. It is an aversion. These two signs, right, Cancer and Aquarius, can't see each other. And Venus in Cancer wants to feel safe, and wants to feel nurtured. It wants to feel at home. That is its essential need, is to feel secure. And Pluto in Aquarius is like revolution, power to the people, all of the people. Like Cancer is like, I don't know who all is going to be there. I don't need that. But Venus is being asked to make some sort of adjustment around its sense of security and safety in order to maybe benefit more of everybody. And when I think about this, just kind of like trying to put that together, I think we're all being asked to really reevaluate what is safety to us when we all aren't free. If we all aren't free, are we really safe? Are we really secure? Are we really at home when only a very small amount of people are actually allowed to be at home where we are? We see that happening, obviously, in Palestine, where they're not safe. They're not safe at all. And we're certainly very much starting to see that, and are seeing that, or more of a population of people are seeing that we aren't safe here in America with how these institutions of power are playing in our faces. And so we're being asked to, I think, question, What is safety? What is security? What is nourishment if it's not available to everybody around us? Saturday, August 2nd is Saturn's day. Saturn is retrograde in Aries, the sign of his fall. I think this is really emblematic, indicative of, our structures are not behaving in dignity, not taking care of people, being fair, being just, that sort of thing. We're watching structures that we thought were in place crumble and fall and dissolve with that very close to near perfect conjunction with Neptune that will perfect next year. Wow, that sounded really bleak. That was very Saturnian of me. Anyways, starting at 12:46 p.m., we should keep in mind that the moon is going to go out of bounds. And so there could definitely be some over-the-top feelings, some really protective, maybe even angry, internally rageful feelings that are happening with the moon also being in Scorpio until the moon will enter Sag at a later time this evening. Oh, so this day, I don't really love it. I don't really love this day. At 2:24 a.m., we're going to get that Mars in Virgo quincunx, that retrograde Chiron. I think this is like the adjustment around how we go about doing things, maybe adjusting how we do things in relation to our sense of wounding or the things we know that we need to heal. Maybe it's re-strategizing Mars, because Mars is about strategy. It's trying to go about doing the things that it does, especially being in Virgo. It's really precise, almost surgical way of, checking off the things on his list. But in its interplay with Chiron, I think that there is just something here around I have to refocus myself because I know this thing about how I'm hurting. I need to maybe move a little bit different here. With Virgo, with that sign Virgo, that also having to do with self-criticalness and atonement. I think that there should be potentially a care here to not be too self-effacing or to take things out on ourselves, to put too much energy in taking things out on ourselves. We're going to get the moon quintile Pluto. This is I think this is having laser-like intuitive focus on a matter. It's 3:40 a.m. There's an intensity about the moon. There was already an intensity about the moon being in Scorpio, but here we are. We're going to get 5:16 and 5:18 p.m. I think this is probably the crankiest time in the day. We're going to get that moon, Setsui square Jupiter, and quincunx retrograde Chiron. So I think there's some sort of over-the-top reaction to either trying to protect ourselves from the hurt that we're feeling or to try to integrate some sort of lesson here. That's not, I don't think that this feels psychologically great. I think that it's kind of ripe with anxiety and kind of a tummy ache, but a bowel ache. I would just around 5 to 5, 6, 7 p.m. Maybe not. There is a biquintile to Venus from the moon. I hope that it helps and kind of alleviate some of the pressure that we would be feeling just prior to it. And then at 6:06 p.m., we're going to get the moon sextile Mars. This is going to happen at 27 degrees, 33 minutes. And the void, of course, is going to begin. It's going to be happening for about 5 hours. The moon sextile Mars is going to give us the spice to, kind of get some things done, to, move forward in the sort of strategies that we had or we were trying to form. I think that because the moon is in Scorpio, sextiling the Mars, this could be an impassioned little aspect. It's a friendly aspect, but is it really friendly when the moon is in Scorpio and Mars is in Virgo, and the moon doesn't really like to be in Virgo? I think there's something very picky about this aspect. And maybe it's knowing exactly what you need to do. And so I hope that in that moment, we know exactly what we need to do and how we want to move forward. I do think that is a really great aspect for cleaning your kitchen because it's in the evening. Hopefully you're going to be home. It could be a little bit fighty just because it is a moon that is fallen, and, Mars, which is just a spicy planet altogether. At 11 p.m., the moon is going to enter Sagittarius. And so from all of these kind of like deep, dark, passionate, intense, critical, internal kind of churning, yearning kind of feelings, now the moon in Sag is like, yo, I got to lighten up. That's a lot. That's a lot. I want to adventure. I'm going to proselytize about what I've learned in, over the last 2.5 days of me feeling so like broody and intense. And now I want to be free of that. The moon in Sag is an adventurous moon, very, very focused on its own sense of freedom and learning. It can be a wise moon. It can also be a little bit of a self-righteous moon. I love Sag placements. I think that moon in Sag is very fun, and it's a nice way to just kind of like take a load off after the passionate and intensity of a moon in Scorpio. Sunday, August 3rd. Sunday is the sun's day, and the sun is thrilled to be in Leo. All about Leo, all about me, right? Just shining in the sky. In the sign of Leo, we know that this is when the summer kind of gets that like hazy, stale effect. And I don't mean stale in a bad way, but it's just like the days could kind of last forever, even though because we're past the solstice, it's going to start getting a little bit shorter bit by bit. But there is a like, I don't know, the all-encompassing warmth that the sun in Leo kind of offers us, the full breadth of its warm, loyal, generous light. I love that the sun is in Leo. So, few things today. There's a ton of aspects that the moon is making. A ton. The moon is out of bounds. It's in Sag. And I think he's just like, let's go. Like, let's go. Let's go. I think that there's like some sort of intuitive hit, it's just like, I got this new idea, or this new idea comes on to me and it's just like, bing. It could be almost like a shock, or a start, a shaking up. And I say that because the moon is going to oppose Uranus and Gemini. This is so early in the morning though. It just kind of like, it's such a idea driven kind of opposition, I feel like. And then we're going to get some trines. We get a trine to retrograde Saturn, a trine to retrograde Neptune, about like the kinds of ways that we're trying to set up this new sense of future, these new foundations. Really lovely trines, passionate, fired up, right? Because they're fire signs. We get a moon sextile Pluto, the ability to go deep, the ability to like kind of maybe have the wisdom to know how you want to operate in this world. I love the sextile from the moon to Pluto. There's going to be a biquintile, the Chiron. This is like, I think this is like wisdom. right? You go deep and then you're able to kind of like pull out some wisdom in this moment. We do get a quincunx from the moon to Venus. This could be a little bit of some anxiety inside of relationships. It's like maybe you know what you need to do, and like, oh, but that includes making some sort of adjustment, some sort of emotional adjustment with how you are interacting inside of relationships or how you're doing care and nurture, that sort of thing. We get some biquintiles to Jupiter, we get a quintile to Mars. And we get a moon in Sag trine Mercury and Leo, passionate. So like this afternoon stuff from like 11:30 a.m. all the way until about 11:10 p.m. I think it feels a little bit like we're flying. We're having conversations, we're sharing ideas, maybe we're sharing our visions, our wisdom, like the ways that we want to move forward with our future, setting up our new foundations and everything. This feels really, I think it's juicy. I think it feels really good. We're like, yes, gung ho, ready to go, ready to get things done. And then we have a sesame square to the retrograde Chiron in Aries, and not much shortly after that, we're going to get the moon quincunx Jupiter in Cancer. I think that there's maybe some sort of like, I'm ready to go, all of this. And then we're maybe acutely aware of like our own shortcomings and like maybe the shortcoming that we can't quite get past or get through, right? But we persist. And then we're going to get that quincunx to Jupiter in Cancer. I think this is a caution to not go overboard in all of the ways that we're feeling really passionate, because there could, potentially feel like we are all of a sudden needing to change something about how we are emotionally connecting in that moment. So the afternoon is so lovely. All things considered, with all of the very strange stuff that we got going on in the world. Yeah. So use that afternoon wisely. Use the fact that there's a ton of aspects in this day to really just kind of like get things done, right? I think this is a really, really great day for doing all of the errands that you need to do, especially if you're like out in the world, being social. Maybe there's a little hiccup, like early morning, but like maybe you're not even awake yet, The afternoon aspects are such a lovely time to like go to brunch, to connect, sit in a park and read a book, read some poetry, have, the sort of like broader conversations with people about like the wisdom that or something like that, um, try to use that day or that afternoon really wisely. And then just a little bit of caution around pushing yourself too far in the very, very late evening. Monday, August 4th is the moon's day, and the moon is in Sagittarius, and very out of bounds. So we could really, really be feeling very kind of extraordinarily focused on our own freedom, our own sense of adventure. We could just be feeling pretty fired up and passionate about some things, with the moon being out of bounds in a fire sign. There's not a lot of aspects going on at all today. I do think that could potentially be a kind of maybe feeling like things are a bit stale or frozen, like time is liminal, not really moving as fast as it was maybe yesterday when we had a ton of aspects, right? At 2:47 p.m., we are going to have the moon in Sagittarius square the nodes. It's at the bendings, right? And so with the moon squaring the nodes, I think that there is a choice point, right? It's between the past and the future. And it's kind of being asked to use its inherent wisdom to release something about the past in order to move forward into a brighter future. And if we consider that the moon is moving towards that north node in Pisces, and both of these signs in the moon in Sag and the north node in Pisces are ruled by that Jupiter in Cancer, wanting to expand one's sense of care and wisdom and like intuitiveness, right? It's like maybe releasing some sort of like old outdated thoughts and like things that we've learned in order for us to move towards the future in a better way. So we have a choice here. We have a choice to get rid of something from the past in order to move towards our future. 5:08 p.m. We're going to have the moon sesqui square retrograde Mercury. It's a square and a half. It's a cranky aspect. I think that there's something here about like let's really think on how we choose to communicate today, how we choose to engage in conversation, because that sesqui square could kind of bring up some very like, I don't know, almost like self-righteous kind of critical things that we maybe have no business really sharing. So I would say that today, especially during the day, to just be really, really cautious about how we are choosing to communicate. The Mercury retrograde is whooping my butt still. Mercury being retrograde in Leo is like, there's some pride in the ways that we're communicating. It's like, I'm standing on business, right? But is all the business good enough to be stood on? I think that there's something there about that. With the sesqui square, both in fire signs, Mercury in Leo retrograde and that moon in Sag. And so it's like feeling really passionately about something, but like it might not be correct. So like cool your jets. 9:40 p.m. we get that sun quintile Uranus. And this is just like such a flowing, pure little aspect of like these ideas, these new ideas that kind of like push us forward into being more of the sun, to more creative. This could be just like genius invention, right? That quintile is just so lovely. I wonder if anything kind of shows itself to us in how, in some of the ways, right, we're at the tip of the iceberg of how Uranus in Gemini is playing out. The sun being in quintile to Uranus could just be shining a light on some of the new technologies, new ways of thinking, speaking, hearing, processing, communicating that are coming out. And it could be kind of in an artistic sort of way too, with the sun being in the sign of the artist of Leo, right? There could be some sort of dramatic flair to this as well, considering that, Leo does love a little bit of drama. And Gemini doesn't care about the drama. In fact, it like kind of revels in chisme. So there could just be some sense of electric drama kind of in the sky as well. Like I said, though, not a lot of aspects today. It's really just those three things. And so if the energy feels a bit pregnant with electricity, allow yourself to feel inspired and write those things down. I don't necessarily think that this is the day to be making any major moves, right? Besides maybe working on the ways that we want to release things that we have felt or thought about what we feel about things that have happened in the past to us in order for us to move better forward to the future. Tuesday, August 5th is Mars's day. Mars is at the very, very end of Virgo. You know, the sign that is the sign of the cleaner upper, the perfecter, the uh, fine details, the analyst, right? This is, doing things through analysis, Mars being like doing, right? Uh, Passionate about these sort of like systems that perfect. There's a very like kind of critical nature that is kind of being expressed here. And Mars being at the very end, it's about maybe ending some things here as well. This is a good day to get things done because there are a lot of aspects that the moon is making, right? She's active. However, I don't think that it's going to feel especially good. Gee, what a surprise. Um, the moon is going to enter Capricorn at 10:04 a.m. And just prior to that, we get some weird kind of cranky aspect to the sun. We're feeling a bit emotionally unsettled with like what we're supposed to be doing here. And then we're going to get a square to Mars right before that ingress for the moon into Capricorn. So there's something almost like angry, moon square Mars, feeling emotionally upset and angry and wanting to kind of push forward, but needing to kind of roll with the punches with it being a mutable square from the moon and Sag to Mars and Virgo. Mars and Virgo wants precision. Moon and Sag, broad strokes. These two signs do not jive, right? Do not jive. And so there could be some sort of emotional outburst as it pertains to these two ideas, these two patterns not making sense to each other. Moon is going to enter Capricorn. This is the sign of her detriment. She becomes a bit stoic. She becomes really about business and achievement, needing to achieve, needing to be like kind of ambitious. She's about her business, right? Moon in Capricorn gets things done. Moon in Capricorn, does it feel ooey gooey about things? No, that's not what the moon in Capricorn needs to be doing. And I think that there's an edge to this particular 2.5 days because we do get the moon ruled by that Saturn in Aries, and could be a little bit like feeling a little bit confused as well, a little bit impassioned and also a bit confused, or maybe it has like some sort of sense of like what its vision needs to be or wants to be, but it can't quite do that. And I'm talking about that almost conjunction with Neptune that's kind of also impacting that moon in Capricorn's feelings. Moon in Capricorn wants things to be contained, right? But I think that there's a wildness that's kind of running in the background here. We have a lot of aspects from the moon to quincunx Uranus, square retrograde Saturn, square retrograde Neptune, quincunx retrograde Mercury. This is all from like afternoon into the evening. So I think the quincunx to Uranus is just going to kind of bring some like free floating anxiety, right? Uranus being kind of electrical, and it's just kind of like these things, these ideas, these like different conversations kind of running in the background. And the moon in Capricorn is like, can we just like focus on one thing here? And like, this doesn't feel really great with all of this kind of like free floating data kind of floating around me. I don't really like that so much. The square to retrograde Saturn and retrograde Neptune are going to feel like some sort of limit has been placed on, how the moon wants to operate. This can feel like a crisis of consciousness. Like, I want to go over there and it doesn't feel good. This can feel limited. It can feel a bit blocked. It can feel a bit depressed, right? When we see the moon square Saturn in a natal chart, like this can be issues with feeling emotionally stifled or rejected, blocked, right? Boundaried in some sort of way. And then that square for Neptune can feel just disillusioned and also can be a bit depressed as well. So I don't really like the mid-afternoon so much for feeling emotionally safe or emotionally good in general. And then we're going to get a quincunx from the moon to retrograde Mercury. I think that there is just a little bit of caution around how we choose to communicate at this time, needing to make some sort of adjustment, maybe having to make some sort of break. I think that how we are feeling and what we're thinking aren't quite in communion yet. And so we should definitely take some caution in how we choose to communicate at this time. And then at 11:38 p.m., we're going to get that moon opposite Venus in Cancer. It's kind of interesting because like Venus in Cancer right in this moment is ruled by the moon in Capricorn. And so there's like this awareness of like, there's some sort of issue here. Moon Venus oppositions could be, some sort of issue in relationships, in love, with women, with nurturing, with care, with the sort of consideration that you want. And it's like this awareness of like what you need and trying to get it and not really being able to get it. Venus does not like the sign of Capricorn necessarily. It's yeah, it's an interesting thought process, but the opposition brings an awareness and a head-on collision with the ideas of how one wants to take care versus how one needs or how its needs work. So I think that there's a pressure and a probably feeling not that great into the evening. This day, not necessarily the bestest day, I would say. Though there could be, with that opposition to Venus, there could be something like really wanting to take some sort of action to like self-soothe, and to find pleasure because we're aware that something is wrong. There's something about that. We're aware that something doesn't feel great or isn't quite coming through for us in the moment. So, be careful about how you potentially communicate those issues to other people. If it happens to be inside of a relationship, you're like, I'm not getting the care I need. Okay, how can I carefully describe that and explain that to the person who I need this consideration from? So being sure to just be careful about how we speak and how we offer consideration and care to others on this day. Hey, thank you for listening to today's Astro Weather with me. I'm Sydney. As a reminder, I'm always open to seeing both new and my beloved returning clients. My website is ddastrology.com. That is D as in dog, astrology.com to check me out and just click the email buttons in order to schedule with me. If you're into a more conversational feel with your podcast and content, I have a podcast called BS Astrology with my fellow Mercurial Mommy Bender, and we put out episodes every Sunday for the week. Just search BS Astrology on YouTube or wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts, including Spotify, Audible, and more. Have a good day.